Have you ever noticed how much energy people spend trying to change things they can't actually control? I'm talking about the person who's furious about what the president said or didn't say, or the parent who's devastated that their adult child doesn't share their religious or political beliefs, or the employee who's convinced their workplace would be perfect if only everyone else would just do things differently. Or the family member who spent the entire holiday meal seething because someone said something they disagreed with. So what's going on here? Why do we let ourselves get so worked up about things that are fundamentally beyond our control? The answer has to do with something that psychologists refer to as locus of control. And understanding this concept might be one of the most important things you can do for your mental and emotional well-being. I'm Coach Dave, and I've been helping people cultivate mental and metabolic health for over 10 years. So what even is locus of control? Locus of control is pretty straightforward. It's about where you believe your control over your life resides. If you have an external locus of control, you believe that your emotional state, your success, your failures, basically everything about your life is determined by forces outside of yourself. Other people, circumstances, luck, fate, the universe. You're at the effect of the world around you, and there's not much you can do about it. Now, if you have an internal locus of control, you believe that you are responsible for your thoughts, feelings, decisions, actions, and ultimately how you direct your attention. You understand that while you can't control what happens around you, you absolutely can control how you respond to it. And here's the thing, your locus of control doesn't just affect how you think about success and failure. It fundamentally shapes your ability to regulate your emotions. I stumbled onto a clip from the Whatever podcast recently, and instead of me reciting what it was that was said during the podcast, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of paste the video of it in here.
What do you think is the biggest red flag in a woman?
Oh, yeah. So externalizing. So an externalizer is somebody who's doesn't have an internal locus of control. So she gets angry. It's not because of anything that's going on inside of her mind, it's that you did this. So the way that they're going to regulate their own emotion is not by controlling themselves, but by trying to control everything around them. And if you're going to be around them, they're going to be trying to control you. So like, don't do that. We have to do this. And if you deviate from that, they get all out of sorts because they're in this like perpetual and completely futile quest to make external reality permanently exactly how they want it to be so that they can feel non-anxious or non-angry or whatever. And that's not possible.
Now, before anyone gets defensive, this isn't just about women. This pattern shows up everywhere. I've seen it in extended families, in work environments, in political discourse, in religious communities, and yes, I've even seen it in myself. People with an external locus of control are constantly trying to impose their beliefs and values on others because it appears easier to modify or control other people's behavior than to reflect on their own beliefs and behaviors and consider where they might have opportunities to grow. I've seen the damage this does across generations. Parents who insist that their children's beliefs, values, and even their personalities conform to the family, whatever that means. These parents subscribe to what I call the factory model of parenting. They believe it's their responsibility to produce a certain kind of person, and so they attempt to shape and mold their children using whatever means of coercion, persuasion, or force they deem necessary to get compliance. Why? Because they have an external locus of control. Their kids need to be a certain way in order for them to be happy. If their kids aren't that way, they feel unhappy, displeased, or disappointed. Contrast that with parents who have an internal locus of control. They adhere more to what I refer to as a garden model of parenting. They cultivate an environment where their children can thrive and then encourage their flourishing, whether or not it lines up with their expectations or vision for their kids' lives. See the difference? So look around the world right now. There's a lot going on in the world. Geopolitical movements, social justice issues, political chaos, and people are letting themselves be triggered by events completely outside of their control. They're allowing what the president tweets, what their mother-in-law said over Thanksgiving, or what's happening halfway around the world to dictate their emotional state. And then what happens? They act out. They try to exert control over things outside of themselves, including other people, which is rarely effective. They feel helpless, like they have no agency, like nothing they do makes any difference. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus wrote something nearly 2,000 years ago that's still perfectly relevant. Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control and some things are not. It is only after you have faced up to this fundamental rule and learned to distinguish between what you can and can't control that inner tranquility and outer effectiveness become possible. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, put it this way: between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. Think about that. Frankl endured one of the most horrific human experiences imaginable, and he maintained an internal locus of control. He also observed what happened to other prisoners who allowed their locus of control to be drawn out of themselves. Even in a concentration camp, but maybe especially there, this mattered. Most of us will never face anything close to what Frankl experienced. But how many of us have been taught about locus of control, or that it even matters? Here's what I've learned. If you feel overwhelmed by circumstances and forces beyond your control, it's likely because you're harboring some inner resistance to the circumstances you're experiencing. A sense that things shouldn't be this way, or things should be different. From the president shouldn't be behaving that way to my child shouldn't be behaving that way. But here's the reality. Things aren't different. They are the way they are. The sooner you can accept this, the sooner you can reclaim control of your emotional regulation. If you are dependent on circumstances outside of yourself being a certain way in order for you to feel okay, you are at the whim of forces beyond your control. Now, I understand there are legitimate causes for concern in the world. There are forces at work pursuing interests that may not align with your values. They may in fact be malevolent, and you may be scared or angry about what's going on. Fair enough. But unless you're willing to take actual effective action, thereby expanding what you have influence or control over, you're better off tuning out the noise, because all it's doing is stressing you out. And here's a hard truth. Taking up arms as a keyboard warrior on social media does not constitute effective action. Contributing to the conversation by bashing people online is a myth. It provides you with the illusion of constructive contribution, when in fact all you're doing is adding to the mental pollution, which, when it comes back in your direction, stresses you out. Your time would be better spent working out, taking a nap, volunteering, or having coffee with a friend and talking about actual things that are actually going on in each of your actual lives. If, on reflection, you realize you've been living with an external locus of control, the shift is actually pretty simple. Living it out, however, is going to take some practice. Here's your new mantra. Ready? Repeat after me. I am responsible. That's it. I'm responsible for my thoughts. I'm responsible for my decisions. I'm responsible for my actions. And I am responsible for my emotional state. See, there's only one person on this planet responsible for your emotional regulation, and like it or not, that person is you. So what can you do right now? You can ask yourself, what bugs me? Acknowledge which circumstances you're allowing yourself to be negatively affected by, and be specific, and write them down if it helps. Then accept that they are what they are, and that they're beyond the power of your control or influence. This doesn't mean you approve of them or like them, it just means you stop resisting reality. And then invoke the mantra, I am responsible for my emotional regulation. It's not someone else's responsible to make me feel happy or secure or calm or at peace. That is up to me. While you're at it, here are some other questions to sit with. What's going on in the world around me that is making me feel upset, overwhelmed, or helpless? How willing am I to accept and release those things which are beyond my control or which do not live up to my expectations? How can I accept that things are the way that they are? And how can I release my attachment to the way I think things should be? In order to reclaim your emotional regulation in the present moment, and it is always the present moment, let go of the need to control people and circumstances outside of yourself. Allow things to be how they are. As the Stoics and more recently Mel Robbins would say, let them. When you do this, something remarkable happens. You stop being at war with reality. You reclaim your energy. You discover agency you didn't know you had. And you become genuinely free. Not free from problems or challenges or difficult circumstances, but free to choose how you respond to them. And that changes everything. I hope this is helpful. If it is, share it with someone you care about. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and stories in the comments below. This is the kind of thing I'm writing about in my new book, which will be released later this year. If you'd like to join the waitlist, visit me online at mycoachdave.net.